Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Duke Wisdom Podcast. We're recording right after the Duke Maine season opener for men's basketball. The Blue Devils won that one by 34 points by a score of 96-62. This is a game that I think started slowly, which seems to be somewhat of an established pattern after 3 games. I'm getting some heat from some people. I called them not a first half team, and people are saying, first game of the season. And yeah, that's fair. But I think we've seen them play 3 times now, and we've seen them play 3 first halves that are like, all right, like you did okay, but we know you can do a lot better than that. And we've seen 3 second halves that have been a lot better than that. Today's maybe not quite to the extent of the Lincoln or Arizona State exhibitions, but still nonetheless a pretty good second half, I think, from Duke. Got their feet wet. We got to finally see them in a real, actual pressure game setting, and so that was nice to see. I think that we got what we expected a little bit out of Kon Knueppel, out of Cooper Flagg, who I think by far none seem like they're going to be the two highest scorers on the team. But what you were in Cameron tonight, Clinton. I was in Cameron earlier this morning to watch the women's basketball team absolutely throttle Radford by 53 points and allow only 36. But you were in there tonight for the men's game, Clinton. What was the atmosphere like for Cooper Flagg's official debut?
Well, it was the usual Cameron atmosphere as far as that goes. Everyone was just waiting for him to do something spectacular, which he managed to do a couple of times with some dunks flying in. One unfortunately came after the shot clock expired toward the end of the first half. But yeah, I mean, everybody's looking at Cooper, but meanwhile, Kon is the one who's sort of stealing the show.
Well, that's something that I kind of want to talk about a little bit, because I think that at this point we've seen some sort of established consistency from Kon, albeit, again, small sample size, but 3 games now where he's put up, somewhere in the vicinity of 20 points. And so it seems like Kon Knueppel could be averaging, give or take, plus or minus 2 points, around 20 points a game. And to me, it seems like I'm fairly confident in saying I think he might actually lead the team in scoring, which is not something that was on anybody's radar. But I think as we see them play more and more times, I'm gaining a little bit more confidence that he actually is going to outscore Cooper Flagg this season. Is that something that you feel safe saying right now, or would you completely disagree?
No, I think that's a reasonable thing to think, because Cooper is going to draw a lot of attention. Kon is just standing out there wide open a lot of the times and not shy about putting it up. He was, I like to call him a flamethrower. He was really on fire there for a little while in the first half, and he's shown that tendency for sure. He may be a little bit streaky, but we can live with those streaks because that ball looks beautiful going in.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, and people are going to be like, "Oh well, he didn't make. He's not going to make everything." I mean, his 3-point percentage today, 3 of 8, is a little bit less than it's been in the past, but that's still roughly 38%, which is a solid 3-point percentage. If your off day is 38% from 3, I mean, you're cooking something special there, I think. One kind of interesting hypothetical, and this is a way too early hypothetical. I love doing these because I'm an unrealistic person. Is let's say Cooper averages less than Kon. Let's say Kon averages, I don't know, 19 points, and Cooper averages 15 and a half, 16. So let's give it about a 3-point cushion for Kon. If that happens, but Cooper likely averaging more assists, more rebounds, more steals, more blocks, who's the ACC Rookie of the Year?
Good question. Well, Cooper has such a huge head start, with the expectations and all the press and acclaimed number 1 presumptive pick in the draft. It would be hard for Kon to overcome it. Not that he couldn't, but I think Cooper sort of has to be dethroned from that position. It's like the incumbent versus the challenger. And it would take some really spectacular numbers, I think, for Kon to overtake him.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Kon would have to genuinely be in the National Player of the Year discussion. Like I'm talking first team All-American status to take that away from Cooper. And I don't know if Khan's quite there yet because his secondary stats aren't exactly popping off the page. But I will say that I want to talk a little bit more about Khan's game because I think as advertised, a lot of people thought, and we've touched on this before, but a lot of people thought that he was sort of this TJ Power kind of replacement. He can shoot some threes, but can he really do anything else? He can't defend was a very big thing about Kon Knueppel. I think that that's completely untrue. I think that he actually can defend pretty well. Like, he's not an elite defender by any stretch of the imagination, but I think today he was a serviceable defender. He's scrappy, and that's something that you like to see in a player like that. And so I think that there's a lot more to his game than just that 3-point shot. I mean, what did you see from him live and in person?
Well, scrappy is a great word to describe him. He's just got such a high basketball IQ. He knows where to be on the court. He knows what to do. He takes his time to get where he wants to get to with the ball. He finishes beautifully around the rim, uses his body to ward off defenders. And, I turned to my daughter at one point and said, he just knows how to play basketball. And you got Cooper with the high motor, and I'm sure high IQ as well. But Kon really stands out in terms of just knowing what to do, where to be. He's open in the right spots, comes off those screens beautifully. He's a good defender, like you said. And just basketball smarts that I think are off the chart. I see lottery pick.
Yeah, Kon has that skill that translates to any level. He knows how to get buckets. Just genuinely, like, he can score in so many different ways. He can get to the rim. That's kind of been the surprise for me, is how well he's able to use his size and create space, because he's not a particularly quick player, but you see a little bit of Luka Doncic's game in him, and his ability to get into the lane despite lacking some of that quickness that traditionally you see from guards that are good at getting downhill. And so I've been impressed by that. His ability to finish in the paint without really elevating a lot, I think is interesting as well. And so I think he's going to fit in really, really well into the NBA. And like you mentioned, that basketball IQ has caused a lot of people to draw that Reed Sheppard comparison, which is far from a one-for-one comparison, but I think it's a popular one because it's a highly rated recruit that comes in to a team where he's not expected to be anywhere even close to the best player on the team, but sort of begins to resemble potentially being one of the best, or the best, second best player on the team, whatever it might be, and then just shoots up the draft boards into a top pick. But I think something that Kon has that Reed Sheppard doesn't is that size, is that ability to use his size and score in the paint. But he's also lacking maybe a little bit of the passing repertoire that Sheppard has, that kind of thing. But I think Kon Knueppel is just a surprise. I mean, the amount that he has to his game, I was very much unaware of, I think, 3 or 4 months ago.
This may sound like a bit of a ridiculous comparison, but Larry Bird, he's got Bird game. You couldn't hardly see daylight under Larry Bird's shoes, but it didn't really matter because he knew basketball so well, and he could get to the paint and score, and just very high basketball IQ.
I mean, that's definitely high praise. I think you can definitely see the bits and pieces of Larry Bird's game in the way Kon plays. I think there's no doubt about that. And speaking of high praise, I'm going to give some more high praise to both of us, actually. Clinton, we're both 100% accurate on our season projections so far.
100%.
Yeah.
Well,
there was a lot of doubt.
Yeah, tough pick. They had, an 11-point lead at halftime, so they didn't exactly blow them out of the water like the previous two opponents. They allowed 33 points in the first half, which is probably a high so far. Maine acquitted themselves quite well in the first half especially, and really hung in there, made some shots, and kept it close. And but the real issue at halftime was rebounding. We were being out-rebounded at the half. So the guy that was really in my doghouse tonight was Malawach. I was very high on him coming into this game, but after tonight, I kind of like Malik Brown in there as option one. And I can see where Malawach is just rough around the edges, got a lot to learn. He got beat to the basket by a guy who looked like he was straight out of an LL Bean catalog a couple of times. And so he's got a learning curve ahead of him.
Yeah, I think that he's definitely raw, and he showed that. I saw the glimpses of him struggling a little bit at times, but I also saw something that it was like, I love having Malik Brown on the floor. I think Malik Brown is a particularly he's a better defender on the perimeter than he is in the interior. I think is something that I've noticed about Malik, and so that's why sometimes it feels like he's a better option than Kaman because Kaman's so young and he makes mistakes. But there were stretches, I think, especially during that first half, where John took Kaman out of the game. And then, not that Malik was doing a poor job defensively, but I think that Maine recognized that. They recognized when Kaman's not in the game, and they started getting downhill a lot more frequently because they weren't fearing for a 7'2" shot blocker in the paint.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, okay, I can finish now if I get into the paint. And so I think that while Kaman is young and it can be difficult to keep him on the floor for really long stretches, I think as the season goes on, there are going to be games where that kind of maybe needs to happen. Because like when you play a Kansas and you have Hunter Dickinson, KJ Adams, those kind of guys, you can't play him 18, 20 minutes in that game. He's got to play like close to 30, because if you're going 6-7 minutes at a time with one of those guys from Kansas on the floor going against just Malik, love Malik to death, man, but I think he's losing that battle in the interior. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I think I'm a little more sober after tonight's game, thinking about opponents upcoming, like Kansas and Arizona and Auburn, after watching us struggle, against the mighty Black Bears. So, yeah, I see your point. We're going to need some size, obviously, and we don't have a lot to choose from when it comes to size right now, with Ngamba still working his way back. So definitely he's going to have to step up to the plate. I just saw him getting beat around the basket, being in the wrong spot. And so, yeah, I'm a little more worried than I was before about some of these upcoming games after watching tonight.
Yeah, I think the defense struggled from a lot of the things that the offense never really, I don't know, it never really struggled per se, but sloppiness is something that I think they fell victim to on both sides of the ball. But the one thing that really struck me the entire game is this team is supposed to be, its defense is predicated on, let's attack the passing lanes, let's get steals, let's get runouts, let's play fast. And when you force, I think they forced maybe 13 turnovers, but then like had 12 themselves. So a 1 turnover difference against Maine doesn't give me the warm fuzzy feeling. Like they need to get a much larger turnover deficit. Be like the women's basketball team. Force 34 turnovers. Okay, maybe not that many, but like you've got to get that number against Maine. That number's got to be higher, because when you play the Kansases, the Auburns, the Kentuckys of the world, they're going to be a little bit more airtight with that basketball. And if you have the sloppy plays, like where that one play where Gillis is going down and he just throws this pass straight to a Maine player on the fast break, Cooper Flagg to start the second half just kind of like falls down, turns it over, leads to a Maine basket. Those kind of mistakes, they're going to add up in a big way against better opponents. And so when you kind of advertise yourself as this team that's going to collect steals and run the break, you can't have a turnover margin that close against Maine,
Yeah, there were a few questionable calls, which also didn't help. Instances where we had a steal, it seemed like, but then the ref blew the whistle. But 13-12, you're right, that's no kind of margin. It's almost like we fell in love a little bit with offense and forgot a little bit about defense. I know that John has been preaching to Cooper in particular to get out into the lanes, and we saw a little bit of that. But there could definitely be tighter pressure, more pressure, a little more focus on the defensive end and letting that fuel the offensive end. Tonight, it felt like maybe they were kind of in love with their resume from the previous game as, this torrid three-point shooting squad, and they fell back to earth a little bit tonight.
Want to join a community of Duke accounts publishing news, theories, and predictions on Duke athletics? Join the Duke Wisdom Network. Just go to dukewisdom.org/join network today and fill out the form with your name and social media. Or you can DM at Duke_Wisdom on Twitter or Instagram. Become a part of the community of Duke fans publishing their takes today. Again, that's dukewisdom.org/join network to DM at Duke_Wisdom on Twitter or Instagram.
Well, they were a little sloppy, and definitely the three-point shooting, it was no 17 of 34, but, I mean, still 11 out of 29, and when you compare that to Maine, who shot 3 of 14, you're putting up twice as many, and you're shooting it at a much higher clip. It's easy to say when you set the precedent at, we're going to be a 50% three-point shooting team, I guess it's easy to say, oh man, we had a rough shooting night when it's 38, but then you got to take a step back sometimes, and 38% as a team shooting 33s is great. Like, you're going to win pretty much every game you do that. And so if this team's bad day is 38% from three, that's going to get them out of some tough games, I think.
Well, I was watching the scoreboard, and I took a few photographs at different points in time, and I think at one point we were shooting 28% from three. And then we made a few more to bring it up to a more respectable number. But yeah, I mean, I'll take 38% over 28%, of course, any day of the week.
Well, remove Cooper Flagg, who shot 0 of 4 from three today, which he's not exactly advertised as the strong 3-point shooter. He's supposed to be a good 3-point shooter, but a tough day for him from three. I'm glad that he still felt comfortable enough to pull that many. But 0 of 4, if you remove that from the equation, they're at 44%. So that's pretty good for the rest of the team.
Well, maybe you should remove a couple of more, and we can get it up over 50.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Just remove everybody except Tyrese Proctor, and we shot 60.
Tyrese had a good game. I think Caleb had a good game, making it to the basket a number of times and showing that he's a strong finisher around the rim. So, our more senior players. In fact, I think the team as a whole performed better when the older players were in the game tonight. And we have to remember that these guys are young, and this was the first game they've ever played in college, aside from 2 exhibitions. And talented though they may be, they're going to need a little more time to mature on the vine. Unfortunately, the schedule really isn't going to permit that. They get one more tune-up with Army, and then it's off to the races.
Yeah. Well, talking about some of those returning players, the 2 returning players, Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster, I'd be remiss if I did not bring up the fact that there is absolutely no separation for me in this discussion. Like I've talked every episode, I think, for the last 5 about how Tyrese Proctor, like I love Tyrese Proctor so much, and I thought that maybe I was going to get a little bit of a bragging point or some sort of talking point if he had a better game than Caleb Foster today, but I don't think that you can definitively say that either of them outplayed the other. I think they had almost as equivalent of a game as 2 players can have.
Yeah, and the transfer players to me stood out as well. I thought they all had solid games. The big 3, I guess, and Sion and Brown. Yeah, all 3 of them were solid contributors and sort of the steadying presence that they were recruited to bring, I think, to a otherwise pretty young team.
Yeah. I think, obviously nothing Malik does usually jumps off the page, statistically speaking, but he had a solid game. One thing about Malik that I liked was some of those bounce passes, those entries and backdoor cuts that Malik Brown was throwing. Those were impressive, and that is something that he brings to the table as as a 5-man that he can kind of come to the top of the key or into the middle of the paint and throw some nice bounce passes. If Duke ever meets a 2-3 zone, that's gonna be a really, really useful asset there.
Yeah, and I'm still smitten with his defensive IQ. I mean, he moves his feet so well. He looks so light on his feet for a big man. He's got great hands. When the refs figure out that he's not actually fouling, when he sticks his hands in there and knocks the ball away, that would help a lot. But, tremendous defensive player. And there's not really a weak link to be found. I will say Isaiah Evans probably got beat a couple of times and looked a step slow on defense. Really didn't contribute a whole lot tonight. It was interesting to me that he came onto the court before Darren Harris, I believe, this time.
Yeah.
And Harris wasn't even seen, I don't think, until mop-up time. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, that was actually going to be my next question to you, because I thought that was odd too. When Isaiah came in as early as he did, I was like, wow. I mean, he must be playing pretty well in practice.
Right.
But and I saw a little bit better decision making offensively from Isaiah. I think a lot of the times he seems to have a tendency to, I get the ball, let's shoot, let's go. But he was passing up half looks. I'll call him a half look, like he has enough time to shoot, but it's not the right time. And he was giving up those looks where he was shooting them in countdown. He was shooting those looks against Lincoln, that kind of thing. And he gave them up for better shots. And so I thought that he was more disciplined as an offensive player. But you're right, defensively still kind of half a step slow. Physically just maybe can't hang on certain possessions. So I thought that was a little bit peculiar that he came in before Darren, especially because Darren had 6 points when he came into the game, and it seems so far that anytime Darren Harris plays, it's kind of like an instant offense. That guy just can shoot and he can score, and so to me that was a little bit questionable. And I'm looking forward to see if that continues to be that way. Like, will Isaiah come in first against Army? I'm intrigued.
Yeah, we have to believe that something has happened in practice to cause that change. But it could also be that John is just tinkering with the lineup, putting people in at different junctures and different combinations. It is game one, so there's opportunity with these kinds of games to experiment a little bit. You don't want to be experimenting in the middle of the Kansas game. So this is the time to figure these things out.
Well, speaking of Kansas, they got a date with the Tar Heels this weekend.
Oh, I'm gonna enjoy that one.
Yeah, so I think this could be a win-win for me, because I think Kansas is not the number one team in the country very much. Now it's a little bit of a loss if Carolina goes at Allen Fieldhouse and beats the number one team in the country. But at least I'm vindicated in thinking Kansas isn't the best team in the country. So there's a silver lining to everything, I think. But I'll put it this way. Carolina doesn't have an answer for Hunter Dickinson. So if Hunter Dickinson's healthy for 40 minutes, I think that the Jayhawks will win that game.
Well, I fully expect that. And if you got any extra money you want to put on that one, I'll be glad to take it from you.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not feeling too good about the Tar Heels for a bet, especially because it's 44-39 right now. UNC Elon
against Elon.
Yeah.
Well, Elon is tough now.
That's my hometown college, man. They're rocking.
Right. What is their nickname?
The Phoenix.
The Phoenix. All right, they're rising from the ashes.
That's right. Yeah, they're playing them pretty well. I mean, just shooting pretty remarkably well, honestly, Elon is right now. So from what I've noticed from Carolina is they can shoot the ball. They can score the ball, but they're not great defensively. And in the interior, I think there will be a big problem for them going down the line. I mean, Elon has a 7'4" center, but when I learned that, I was like, yeah, well, you can't be very good, because if you're 7'4", why are you at Elon? But I think that it's very clear that Carolina is going to struggle a little bit defensively to start the season, at least.
Are they serving beer and wine at the Dean Dome yet?
Oh, yeah.
A few people might want to have a drink about now.
Yeah. They've got the alcohol pouring. Well, in the news of not so good things happening to your sports teams, we've talked about the good teams, even men's and women's basketball. Let's briefly touch on the other team that resides at Duke University, the football team, who had who played who played two really good quarters, one decent quarter, and the fourth quarter happened. It occurred, but it wasn't good football for Duke University.
I was really excited. I was literally sitting on my couch laughing out loud when Duke went up 28-17. And I was thinking, my God, we can actually pull this thing off. We can beat the number 5 team in the country in their place. Because we were looking great at that point, going for it on 4th and 1 from the 6, I think it was. And, I was saying, kick the ball. But they went for it and they got it. And I'm like, oh my God, we can actually beat these guys. And then the rest of the game, I'd rather not talk about.
I mean, it was kind of dumbfounding. It almost looked, that fourth quarter for Duke almost looked like SMU's fourth quarter against Duke, right? And except Miami knew what to do with the ball when they got it. I
did manage to put a few points on the board, didn't they?
Yeah. And I think that's the difference, right? That's the difference between, I have been saying the whole year, I think Miami is overrated. I think they're a little bit fraudulent. I honestly still believe that, even after losing a game by 3 touchdowns. I think that Miami's going to go undefeated. I think they're going to win the ACC. They'll probably be 13-0. Like, Miami and SMU are probably going to play for the ACC championship, the two teams Duke has just lost to, because Clemson just lost. So I think a 13-0 Miami team is going to go in with the first round bye in the playoffs, and then they're going to play in that quarterfinal, and they're going to lose. And I firmly believe that. They're going to meet somebody from the Big Ten or the SEC, and they're going to lose. I don't think they're that good still, but they're good enough to be in the playoffs. And the thing that separates them from Duke is they don't waste opportunities. They don't make as many silly mistakes. They might not be the greatest team, but they, at the very least, aren't going to beat themselves.
Yeah, we threw the ball to the wrong team a couple of times. First quarter, fourth quarter, we were a bit of a turnover machine, and Miami knew what to do when they were given those gifts. And, people were saying we should have gone for a touchdown instead of kicking the field goal when we had a chance to take the lead. I don't really think that would have made any difference. There was just too much of a tidal wave of turnovers and touchdowns on the other side, and they burned us pretty easily. The offense for Miami looks like a pretty strong juggernaut.
Yeah, it
is. The defense is less so, and I think you're right that a more talented team can take advantage of them than the one they were playing on Saturday.
Yeah, well, we're heading into a stretch of 3 games to end the season for football that, I mean, at least on paper, can be 3 victories, with the first one being NC State, which you would think and you would hope, given the season the Wolfpack has had, that Duke is set to win this game. But it's in Carter Finley. State's, playing fairly well, actually, recently. And so I think that this is a game that is really crucial for Duke. If you win this one, you can kind of get back on track, and you can envision that 9-3 finish, or at least maybe an 8-4 finish. But if you lose this game to State, I think that can spiral. You've already lost twice in a row. That could be 3. Then why not 4? Why not 5? And then next thing you know, you've ended the season 6-6, which would be an absolute shame after being 6-1. But I think that this is a really, really crucial game that could go either way, in my opinion.
Well, I was proud of the fact that they didn't fold against Miami after that heartbreaking loss to SMU. They could have. They could have come in there and laid down. They didn't. They fought hard. Like I said, midway through the third quarter, it looked like we were just going to pull off the upset of the century. So I give them a lot of credit for that. Things sort of fell apart after that. But They're not playing Miami. State is not Miami. I fully expect Duke to win at least 2 out of 3 to finish the year. I'm not sure what, they might lose to State. They might lose to Virginia Tech. I think they'll beat Wake Forest. But I think they'll win at least one of the next 2. I'd love to see them finish out 9-3, but 8-4 might be a little more realistic for this team. And I think a lot of us at the beginning of the year would have definitely said we'll take 8-4.
Yeah, definitely would take 8-4. And I agree with you. I think that's what they'll end the season with. But whatever the football team does, the Duke men's basketball team hasn't lost a game. Undefeated.
We are undefeated.
Never
and
lost.
We should be number 1 in the country then, right?
Yeah, I think that's how that
we're
works.
Undefeated. Yeah.
That's how that goes. Well,
until proven otherwise,
that's
we're
what
number
I'm saying.
1.
Well, you know who else is undefeated? The Duke Wisdom podcast and our projections. And so that's why you listen here, because we're always right about everything. And so as proven, and until it's proven otherwise, we're going to keep going with that. But as always, thank you guys for listening or watching on YouTube. Make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Follow Duke Wisdom on Instagram and Twitter. Go check out my picture-taking skills that I put on display today at women's basketball. I've added a new skill set to my arsenal. Go check that out on the website, dukewisdom.org. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys.